Hello, and welcome to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City where we explore the history of Troy, New York, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, John Salka. We're back for part 2 of our interview with former Troy Mayor Mark Pattison. In the second half of our chat, Mark discusses some of the major projects undertaken during his tenure as mayor, his working relationship with then New York State Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno, and the 1999 mayoral election when he sought a second full term to lead the Collar City into the new millennium. If you didn't hear part 1 yet, I would strongly recommend going back to listen before starting part 2. I can't thank everyone enough for returning for this month's episode. The response to the show has been absolutely overwhelming. After just 4 weeks, we hit 800 downloads, and that number continues to climb. We're continuing to record new chapters, and I'm really excited to share these upcoming stories with you. If you're looking for more info, head over to troystorypod.com for the latest news on upcoming episodes, bonus content, and to sign up for those all-important email updates. And please, if you could, leave a review of our show on Apple Podcasts. Reviews are the most effective way to help people find the show. Lastly, if you have an idea, suggestion, or just want to say hello, feel free to drop us a line at mail@troystorypod.com. All right, let's get right into part 2 of our interview with Mark Pattison, former mayor of the city of Troy. You mentioned Senator Bruno.
I don't know if he or I realized how powerful he really was. He came up with $4 million of additional state aid and said, now you don't have to raise the taxes. And I said, well, I got to raise the taxes. I said, it's not recurring. It's one time. And then he came up, I think, with another $4 million. I said, no, well, now you don't have to raise the taxes. I said, still not recurring. And so there was a flyer in every household in the city of Troy a week after I said no the second time to him, because he has lots of power. But we didn't do that. We used the money to pay off the debt that we'd accumulated, and we renegotiated the debt. We owed. It was 28% of our budget was going to debt service,
Which is insane.
More than insane. Yeah, we got it down to 16%, which is about 5% higher than you really want it to be. This is the best I could do. So we got down to a flat $6 million, which just got paid off last year.
Right, being 2023 being last year. Yeah, right. Which is funny because this was 1996.
So we was flat debt, and that was just a part of our strategy. We went to the bondholders and said, we are an honorable institution. We should pay you. We can't. So we need to work something out. And we worked out different deals with different bondholders. Some took 0% interest. Some took, cut the principal. But we reduced the debt fairly substantially. And there were a couple different. It was the hockey rink in Landsberg that there was a bond on. There was the other sale lease to the LDC deal. What in Troy, the big deal wasn't municipal debt. It was contract debt. We were over our constitutional debt limit, except it wasn't municipal debt. It was a creative mechanism. So that really, in fact, in a way, strengthened my hand, because it wasn't municipal debt. When I went to them, they said, well, you can raise the taxes. I said, I already did. Right? I raised the taxes 21% and water rates 38%. Well, you can cut costs. Well, I already did. I laid off people. We've got 47 people. I accepted all the cuts that the previous administration had made, so that all the staff that were laid off before that number we didn't replace. So we had made, so now it's on you. And I said, here's our number. We can't afford more than $6 million a year, and whoever gets here first gets the deal, gets better deals, right? That's just the way it works. So it was, again, I had some staff who were really helpful, who understood that stuff better than I did. But we came up with a plan, and we went to them and, again, reduced the debt. And we had other things. The Broadway corridor was $1 million in the Broadway corridor that was available to us from the federal government, but we couldn't take it because we couldn't make the match. And this is what I say is part of the Hope agenda. I just said, well, this is crazy. I can't turn down $1 million when you're broke. So I signed the form. I said, well, yeah, sure, we'll make the match. I mean, we didn't have any money, but I wasn't going to walk away from $1 million. So we were able to do the Broadway corridor and repave and redo the streets and do a bunch of other things. Again, create hope. We did the Congress Street corridor. Again, create hope. Things are improving. Things are getting better. We're making progress here. So that was part of the goal. And we did a waterfront planning effort that was run by TAP. That was, and we went around and had a big community meeting and put sticky notes on projects and voted. So I had a book of potential projects up and down the waterfront that I could throw at somebody, Senator Bruno or others, when we had opportunities for funding. But again, you do some planning, you engage people. They're part of the process.
You mentioned Senator Bruno again, and you had a good working relationship. I mean, even though you were of two different parties, he was the majority leader, and I think he recognized that the city of Troy's success was ultimately tied everywhere else.
I agree with that. My father ran against him when he first came on the scene, and Joe beat him. He lived down the street from my Uncle John in Tamarack. So there were acquaintances. I always treated him with respect because he was the Senate Majority Leader, and he always treated me with respect, although usually if he was having a press conference in Troy, he'd tell me 10 minutes before he got there, but he'd tell me. And so we had a good relationship, and ultimately I endorsed him for re-election, which was, again, not something that was popular with some of my Democratic.
Did you do it 4 times or just once?
No, just once.
Just once, okay.
Just once. I did it when there was no opponent.
Okay.
So it wasn't undermining the Democratic. Again, he was the Senate Majority Leader. My job was to make sure the city of Troy was able to recover. Yeah. So he had resources that we needed. He never gave any money except for those first chunks to the budget. It was always around project. But those were projects that I was supporting.
What were some of the major projects that you started under your administration at that time? Do you remember any of the big ones? Let's just like
Yeah, sure. We again we did the Congress Street project downtown. We also did got 2 corridor studies for Upper Congress Street and for Hoosick Street. We did the Broadway corridor. Things that came to fruition much later. We had the trail all along we have funding for the trail, the one along the river. It's in pieces, and I don't even know if we did. A part of that was the River Street Park.
Riverfront Park?
Riverfront Park was a part of the trail. The South Troy Industrial Road was our money. Again, didn't come to fruition for maybe still isn't.
25 years later,
yeah.
I think.
But we got the initial funding for that. Initial funding for some of the Hudson Mohawk Industrial Gateway renovations, the boat launch, the fishing pier. Those are all things that came out of the waterfront planning project. And we had a big South Troy working waterfront program that we got funding for, and had plans to restructure where things were over a long period of time. There's a bunch of things. I was the infrastructure mayor. We dedicated a lot of that extra money to infrastructure, and there's things that once you do, you don't ever get a vote for. We put the generator for the upper water system into the water into the public utilities. When the power goes out, the generator goes on. You don't lose water. So there's no crisis.
Right.
So nobody cares. we put 1,000 feet of instituent form, which is this epoxy fiber right in front of Sacred Heart. The sewer was collapsing, or at risk of collapsing. It's way deep. If they'd collapsed, the buildings, it would have been a huge problem. Cost us $450,000 or something. But they put this epoxy sock in it.
Relined it. You relined
it. Low tech. There's a little sock. They pull on the toe of the sock and they pull it through. They've already measured all the holes, and then they heat it with heated water, and it turns into fiberglass, and they come in and cut it out. So you reline the pipe, and now you got structural pipe, and you don't have a collapse. Well, nobody cares, But it's good. We did a lot of things that when I first got to City Hall, the rumor was that we didn't have any police cars, and I actually asked John Headley to do a study, an independent study. Well, he said you got 2 working police cars, so we didn't have equipment. At the firehouse, they had a hose hooked up to some of the trucks, pumping water in because it was coming out so fast because it was leaking. We replaced all of the equipment in the fire department. We did other things that they didn't like in terms of restricting personnel and on-term costs, but we replaced really virtually all of the machinery that you needed, for police. You like to have community policing, you like to have police walking in the streets, but you still got to have a car that drives them there, So, these are necessaries. Again, not things, we weren't deferring maintenance. We did maintenance on City Hall, did a ton of work on City Hall.
The City Hall that doesn't exist anymore.
City Hall doesn't exist.
Right. Right. Like what you hear? Well, then it might be time to give us a flattering review. Reviews are the best way to make the mysterious and magical podcast algorithm suggest our modest little show to other listeners. And if you're feeling extra generous, please share this episode with a friend, family member, or that special person in your life. They'll thank you for it, and we will be forever in your debt. Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, streaming everywhere you get your podcasts. Visit TroyStoryPod.com to learn more. All right, back to the show. You ran for a second term in 99, right? That was election year 99 for a second 4-year. What do you remember from that race? The decision to, okay, I'm gonna run again in Troy, and still today, term limited. You can only run. You can only serve 2 consecutive terms as mayor. What are your memories of that time? Your decision to run? Was there a sense of would you or would you not? What was that time period like?
Yeah, well, I was up to my eyeballs in doing things that I love the job of being mayor, and being in the mix and trying to solve problems. So there's never any question that I was going to run for re-election. I don't know if you remember, but I actually also tried to overturn the term limits.
That's
charter,
right,
and unsuccessfully.
What was the rationale behind that?
I don't believe in it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think there are problems of incumbency that are real, not so much in Troy or lower levels, because in Troy people are perfectly willing to throw you out if they're inclined. But I just think you don't take away somebody's vote. I think that people can decide. And then again, there are other issues with incumbency that are real, that it got to be addressed, and you ought to make elections accessible and fundraising accessible and all that. But so I thought it was an opportunity to change it, and I don't know if I would have run for a third term or not. But anyway, it was unsuccessful. It's a little bit, just like the first time you got a job, but your other job is to run for re-election. So it's you got to sort of figure out how to change gears a little bit. I thought we had a great council slate. We lost the council that year, and I think that's part of the, the tradition of Troy. If you're doing things that are the right, I'm going to say this in air quotes, the right thing to do financially, they're not always the popular thing to do, and you do pay a price. We had raised the taxes. People would call me up and say, okay, well, now we're out of the crisis, so can I have my twice a week garbage back? And I'm like, no. So again, there are consequences to those decisions, and actually today they've continued. Troy has less. Spends more money because things are, but less staff, less resources to solve problems than they've ever had. Less than I did. The job's a lot tougher today than it was when I was there. I was able to hire a substantial group of people to be my senior staff, and we didn't have enough people then, and we've got less people trying to plow streets and pick up garbage, and the police department's probably about the same, maybe even a little bit higher, and fire departments are pretty much the same.
I agree with that. Working in City Hall is a tough gig. You have to love the job. You have to really want to.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it. I had a background and a sort of absorbed about government and all that. But the hell, I'm going to have somebody else write my speeches. I'm going to write my own speeches.
Oh, really? You wrote your own speeches?
I did not, because I never any time to do it. Right? You think you're going to do it, you can't. I just start out. You meet with people in your office, and then you realize my job is to meet with them, but somebody else got to be in that room to make sure that we have follow up and that we have implementation,
or that we agree on what was agreed upon in the meeting.
So there's lots to learn, and it's a tough job. And
I say that no matter who you are, becoming mayor of the city of Troy, you're in store for the swiftest kick in the ass on day one.
Well, you're for the first 10 seconds, you got more than 50% of the people who who voted for you, but it changes pretty fast. Every decision you make's got people who are happy and people who are sad. So, but I love that. I loved going out and engaging with people. That I was, very active in the community, and because I thought that was my job, is to get people with me, to convince them that we were doing the right thing. But we lost the council that year. So it was a tough election, but I was glad to have won, and I lost some staff. They went on to some other things. Our capacity, not all of those people got replaced, because again, slowly, when we raised the tax the first time, that was the last time the council was ever going to do it. They weren't going to do it twice.
One and done.
One and done. Things cost more money. You always want to make sure you're doing things efficiently and as cheaply as possible. So raising taxes isn't the first instance. But at some level, you have to have enough money to do what people are asking you to do, and you have to establish the priorities. So, again, there are consequences to tough fiscal decisions. But I was delighted and had things still to do. And that was a challenge. I think Troy's inclined to hire you again if you're doing okay. But you also have to keep the agenda alive. You have to, once you're reelected and term limited, you're on a slow decline for losing authority and power, and that was actually part of why I did the term limits thing, was just to try to keep in the game. I think I did that a year after I got reelected, but I want to stay relevant for as long as I possibly could. So, but we had things to do, and again, it's a tough job to stay, energized and active about, and you got to keep staff, and
losing staff I'm sure is really hard. That institutional knowledge.
And just there are people that went through the wars with you. So, I mean, I'm grateful to everybody that served with me. They put their life on the line. I say that I'm not exaggerating. They put their life on the line to come work for me. And they all had to find a job afterwards. People don't think about that. They think, oh yeah, well, you get another job. Well, you don't always get another job, or you don't always get the job you want. It just depends on a lot of things. So I'm grateful to the staff and I'm grateful to the citizens of Troy for because that's really who saved the city, was not me. I put plans out there and set goals, but it's the people of Troy who engaged with me and ultimately agreed to do it through their legislative representatives, and that's how we addressed the financial problems. That was my big issue, was financial problems, but I also was very active with trying to bring in the creative economy, the historic preservation, the kinds of things that make a city of Troy unique. Yeah, I always thought you had to have an edge. How do you give Troy an edge? And our history and our connections to RPI and technology and arts is part of that edge.
There's an interesting New York Times article. It's from August 28th, 2000. It's called The Other Economy, and this was a part of a series about municipalities across New York State and the challenges they were facing. This was on the city of Troy. And it's a pretty interesting article. We don't have to go through it, but the article's headline is "Nearly Broke in 95, a City Turns Around. Troy's Fortunes Rebound Sharply, Thanks in Part to New York City's." It's funny. It's sort of a who's who of individuals who stayed involved in local government. Bill Fagan, Patrick Madden, Joe Fama. It talks a little bit about the past history of Troy, and focuses specifically on your time as mayor and the work that you did, and specifically mentioning you only had 2 police cars to put on the street at any one time, et cetera. I'm going to put it in the show notes, so those who are listening, you can check the article out. But it was pretty interesting. It goes into a lot of, here's one of the great lines. But while some cities coped with similar problems, Troy, where bare knuckle politics are a blood sport, did not.
Part of that it's really important is, there were people like Bill Fagan, like Joe Fama, who had ideas and had energy behind those ideas, and those are the people that I engaged with and to try to take their ideas to bring them forward. So again, you don't do this job alone. It takes business, civic, and political forces, all three, to make things work. And again, that is sometimes Troy's weak spot, is we don't have as robust a business and civic side. We have the governmental side, but you need business leaders. You need and you need community. We're a very strong not-for-profit world, with very creative, talented people. You got to tap into those groups. Again, you have to have a vision, right? You have to have a vision. You have to put the vision out there. You have to make yourself vulnerable and say, here's what I think, and then let people decide, give you feedback. It's not always fun, but it's essential. I remember a time, it was one of my favorite moments, but I was up in North Central with a small group of residents, and I think there might have been 15 people in the room, and half of them were my staff, and they yelled at me for 2 hours. And every time I tried to break in, they'd yell at me some more. And my staff would, bury their head and take notes and that kind of stuff. But at the end of that, there's a long enough period, and I said, all right, well, it sounds like you got a lot on your mind. And if it takes all night to get it off your chest, then let's do it. And if it means I got to come back tomorrow, then I'll come back tomorrow. I'll come back until we get it all off our chest. But sooner or later, we're going to have to figure out how to solve problems together. And when I left the room, they didn't love me, but we're having a conversation. And that was my goal, and that's what I love to do. That was what being mayor was all about to me, was getting out there and trying to get people to open up and again, share their visions and share their commitment to trying to solve problems. Because you can't do it without staff, you can't do it without people picking up garbage cans, and you can't do it without the citizens and voters engaging in the conversation about where we're going.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you taking the time.
No, it was fun. History, I probably made up most of it. What do you do when you revisit history? So, but somebody else can check that and challenge it, because again, you have your own view of the world. But thank you. It was fun.
Well, we hope you enjoyed hearing this extended interview with former Troy Mayor Mark Pattison. I certainly learned a lot, and we hope you did too. Tune in next time for Chapter 3, when we speak with longtime Troy business owner Dan Fremont, who opens up about growing up in Troy, his career in the human services and food service industries, and the lessons, challenges, and heartache of running his restaurant, Mud Daddy Flats, for the last 11 years in downtown Troy.
So just like a couple weeks short of my second anniversary, we opened up here on a Tuesday, and sales immediately hit. Boom, people were here. And then that Friday was Troy Night Out. 2014, Troy Night Out was still really hot. At Fulton Street, having a line to the door was no big deal because it was only like 6 feet. Here, a line to the door is 37 feet. And when you got a line to the door and it stays that way, we were nowhere prepared to go like that. It was like...
it's a blessing and a curse.
It is definitely a blessing and a curse. And it's like we had prepped and more than we had ever done before. And then we started running out. I got 12 orders hanging on the slip rack. I got a line at the counter, and I'm out of chicken. Okay, break out everything else we got. We got beef, we got pork. It's like anything I can throw. It's like, these are your options. We can make something. I'm scrambling.
Chapter 3 premieres in March 2024, available wherever you get your podcasts. As always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever streaming service you're using to hear the show to make sure you get notified about upcoming chapters along with special bonus content. Until next time, love yourself, love one another, and may Pod save Troy. Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, is hosted, written, edited, and produced by me, John Salka. Our theme music is by Stephen J. Goldman at Four Legs Records. Like what you heard? Please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City. This is incredibly helpful for getting others to find our show. Want to know more? Visit TroyStoryPod.com to see upcoming episodes, guests, and bonus content. Thanks for listening. The views or opinions expressed by guests are their own and not of the host or Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City.